So that was a major undertaking to design a system and, put it together with all the rules and the regulations in place. And I'm quite proud of what we have accomplished.
Guam Labor Director David De La Sola also credits their software vendor for helping to stand up the program literally from scratch.
That was the best thing that ever happened, was finding them and getting them on board. And they were able to put together a program from nothing with us going over the rules and the regs and designing it and tweaking it.
The biggest challenges were the massive number of fraudulent claims that poured in, mostly from the mainland. At one point, nearly 90% were bogus, which De La Sola says often delayed the processing of legitimate ones.
Out of that 135,000, 110,000 were considered fraud or disqualified, or 1,700,000 weekly claims were deemed fraud. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the 135,000 total claims filed, 110 were fraud, and how much work it went into. So out of those 135,000, about 25,000 claims were paid out. Those were, cleaned, and paid, of which 1,400,000 weekly claims were paid, for a total of $808 million went out in the economy over the year and a half.
GovGuam also benefited, taking in more than $67 million in income taxes right off the top, and GDOL also got another $8 million to run the program.
The most unpleasant side of this whole thing, other than the fraud, was the overpayments. So out of $808 million, we had 3.8% overpayment, or $31 million in total overpayments. That is phenomenally low. In the States, they go anywhere from 20+%.
Some claimants have already come forward and returned the overpayments, but there's still about $23 million to go. De La Sola says they're waiting for guidance from the U.S. Labor Department because, unlike Rev and Tax, GDOL has no mechanism in place for collections.
I tried to help our people as much as possible and waive them. I have to follow strict guidelines. There can't be any fraud or intentional filing for the money. And you had to show financial hardships, along with a whole litany of other things. And if I get too lenient, they could turn around and make it a disallowed cost, and then the government would have to pay for it.
But the human impact of the PUA program in 2021, and even for parts of the year before, were immeasurable for so many. It provided a lifeline for those families whose breadwinners lost their jobs.
A single PUA recipient got between $50,000 to $60,000 if they were affected throughout the whole program. That equated to like $16 an hour if they were working full time. That was more money than a lot of people were making. And so it created some challenges, but it was at a time when people needed it to help them survive and to have some kind of normalcy.
For Guam's News Network, I'm Nestor Lecanto.